The sunk cost fallacy bias and the false cost fallacy. What is the sunk cost fallacy bias? The sunk cost fallacy describes our tendency to continue to pursue an endeavor that we have already committed to in terms of investing money, time, or effort into it, even if those costs are not recoverable. So let's talk about the examples of this bias. In many parts of the world, higher education is costly and students are asked to pay for educational programs in advance. Once they have paid for a particular program, they are unlikely to drop it, even if they find a free program with a better success rate, because we have already invested money into a program. Sometimes, even if the education is free, some students don't drop their university just because they have already invested their time into it, so they might as well try to finish it, even though they don't find it useful or interesting. Another example would be that the sunk cost fallacy also impacts smaller day-to-day decisions like continuing to watch a movie even if it's boring. People are likely to continue watching a movie even if they invested both time and money into it, even though those investments cannot be recovered by continuing to watch the movie. Age seems to have an impact on how much time we are willing to continue watching the movie, with younger people being more susceptible to the sunk cost fallacy. So why does this bias happen? The sunk cost fallacy occurs because our emotions often cause us to deviate from rational decisions. Abandoning an endeavor after committing to it and investing resources into it is likely to cause negative feelings of guilt and wastefulness. Since we want to avoid negative feelings of loss, we are likely to follow through on a decision that we have invested in even if it is not in our best interest. That leads us to the question on how to avoid this bias. Since the sunk cost fallacy is thought to be caused by the desire to avoid negative emotions, we should try to take our emotions out of the equation when making a decision. However, emotions are powerful and hard to ignore. Instead, we may want to use technologies to help us make decisions when it comes to scenarios where we might be influenced by the sunk cost fallacy. The second part of the video is false cost fallacy. So what is the false cost fallacy? In general, the false cost fallacy occurs when the link between premises and conclusion depends on some imagined causal connection that probably does not exist. This fallacy is guilty of trying to establish a causal connection between two events on dubious grounds. In other words, a false cause fallacy occurs when someone incorrectly assumes a causal relationship between two things. The name of the fallacy is fairly literal. Anytime someone thinks A causes B, without a sufficient reason to believe that B is truly caused by A, it's an example of the false cause fallacy. There are different types of this fallacy. To name a few, there are post hoc, ergo propter hoc error, which literally means after this, therefore because of this. The false idea here is that just because two things are consecutive, the first one must have caused the second. For example, a bad football player scored his first goal with different socks on. This scenario should not assume that the player scored his first goal because of his mismatched socks. There is also other superstitions in sports. For example, a player's number grants him with better gameplay and so on. Another example of a false cause fallacy is cum hoc, ergo propter hoc, or, in English, with this, therefore because of this. In this case, the mistake is to assume that when two events often happen together, one causes the other. But the rooster crowing at the crack of dawn does not cause the sun to rise. An important feature of any false cause fallacy is a perceived connection between two events. In most cases, people are reacting to what appears to be a connection, even if it's entirely artificial. So let's look at some interesting graphs that commit to this false cause fallacy.